So I thought I'd take a minute here to thank everybody for coming. This is a wonderful turnout, and I know everybody's very excited to hear from the candidates that we're going to hear from tonight. My name is Andrea Rader. I'm president of the Progressive Women of Arlington. If you would like to get more information about the Progressive Women of Arlington, please come to our Facebook page, Progressive Women of Arlington. That's original, right? And we have a sign-up sheet over here to leave your email and all that. And we'd be more than happy to have you. We meet usually third Thursday of every month, or third Tuesday of every month at the Westminster Presbyterian Church. Now, we were going to have this event at the church. At the last minute, we changed it here. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we try to figure out where everybody's supposed to sit. So thank you so much for your patience and your forbearance. There are pockets of seats throughout here. I also wanted to let you know I'm very excited that we have at least 4 of the 9 candidates running for a school board who are with us here tonight. They will be asked questions by our moderator, Wileen George, and where's Sarah? And Sarah Hisson from Arlington Residents for Inclusion. And they will fill you in on how the process is going to go. Each candidate will have an opportunity to introduce themselves. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer questions. The questions that are pulled from a basket, so they're kind of random. And then also a little time built in for rebuttal if any candidate wants to rebut. We're going to try to keep it moving. We're going to try to keep it respectful. We're kind of like a jury here. We're not supposed to interrupt or yell or do any of that stuff. We're just supposed to listen to the evidence and make our decisions based on what we hear tonight. We will ask the candidates who did not show the same questions that the candidates tonight will be asked, and we will ask them to submit answers in writing and post them on our Facebook page. And if the techno gods are willing tonight, we will have the Facebook or the video of this up on our Facebook page as quickly as possible. So thank you again. Give yourselves a hand for showing up tonight. We're thrilled you're here. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. If you have a question you'd like to ask, there's a basket up here with blank cards. Go ahead and fill a question out and drop it in the box. And if we have time, we'll get to it. Okay? All right. Well, with no further ado, Wileen, are you taking the... I'd like you to meet Wileen George, who scares me to death, but really gets things done. You don't scare me. And Sarah Hisson from Arlington Residents for Inclusion is also one of our moderators. Let's give it up for Sarah, who has done a fantastic job getting that group organized.
We're going to start with about 2 minutes for each candidate to tell why he or she is running for school board. And we'll start with Kathi Arochi.
Arochi, yeah.
I got it right, Arochi.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be invited and to be here. Again, my name is Kathi Arochi, and I have a business degree in business management. And I worked for a telecom company for about, a little over 26 years. And I decided back in 21 that I wanted to do something further. I wanted to serve my community. I wanted to get out because I have a passion for kids. I really do. And so what I decided to do is become an AISD substitute. And I normally substitute high schoolers. And also I normally volunteer to substitute the OCS classes. And the reason I do that is because I'd like to understand and encourage kids that, hey, don't give up on your dreams. And many, many times I've told the kids don't you want to know what happens if you don't give up? That is the main thing that I always tell the kids. And I believe, because of my background, like I said, I have a business degree, and I also have worked in regulatory as well as compliance, budgeting, project management. I'm a statistician. So my background is really looking from an end-to-end view, like, okay, where can we improve? What can we do? Make sure that the dollars are being allocated where they need to be allocated. And let's see what we can do in our schools to bring it back to basics, to make sure that every child has an opportunity to academic excellence. And that is the goal. That's the goal, because the way I see it is that here we are, okay, I'm in my 50s, many of us are, going into retirement age, and the younger ones, that's our leaders. That is our leaders. So we need to prepare them academically and get them to success and be our next leaders.
All right, 2 minutes. I'm Watson Robinson Jr. I'm ready for the school board. I ran before 2 years ago, and it was a unique experience because I spent 20 years in AISD as a teacher, a coach, won 2 city championships, Barnett. And and as an administrator, I've seen every level of education. And I had a saying a long time ago. I spent 27 years in the Marine Corps, did 2 combat tours in Iraq. And I've had a whole life of service since I was 17. And one of my sayings I have is that when I'm in the service of my fellow person, I'm only in the service of my God. And one of my big things is just inclusion. Everybody, every child that comes through AISD should have the opportunity to be great. Every single one of them. When I was 14, my parents left and the church raised me. And so in a year and a half, I'll have a PhD. And that comes from a kid whose parents abandoned him, right? And just to have people be able to support our kids, because they're our kids, and they're in our neighborhood, and they're gonna, like you said, they're gonna have to take over, they're gonna have to become leaders, and the education system, for me, a really big thing in my campaign is safety. Not only safety for kids, but safety for teachers and everybody that works in the schoolhouse. And that's one of the cornerstones of my campaign, because I don't think if you can't learn if you're not safe. And so my background with the Marine Corps, I'm also a state school safety certification officer. And one of my big things in 2019, one of my football players got shot and killed by the high school. And that was one of my points in my life where I had to examine like what I'm doing and if I'm working towards a goal of making the schools safer. Thank you.
My name is Corliss Bunkley, and I am, of course, running for place 7. I have been in education my entire adult career. I've done a little bit of everything from elementary to higher ed. And in the last year, I have had a tug and a pull to, as I like to say, put my time and money where my mouth is. I believe in public education. My children are in public schools in Arlington. I am a product of public education. And I know that the work that teachers do is creating a world where all of us are able to do the job. So teachers and students are important to me, and student voices. I have kids. Middle school is the time that you find out exactly what school is about for kids. And so hearing my daughter and her friends have conversations and understanding that Arlington ISD is doing great things, but there's always an opportunity to grow and change and improve. And part of that is the work that I do for a living. And so I'm bringing my gifts and talents to a district that I chose to move to for my kids to go to school. So I'm excited to be here tonight and looking forward to the questions that are given to us.
Hi, I am Brooklyn Richardson. I am running for AISD Place 6. I am excited to be here tonight and to give you a 2-minute history of 42 years. The short version is I am a Baptist preacher's daughter, brought up in Abilene, Texas. I still consider it home where my mom and dad are. I'm a little bit of a mutt. I have moved around quite a bit, but have decided to call Arlington home with my 11-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son and my sweet northern Minnesota husband. I tricked him. He has lived here and we are not leaving. Before I had children, my background was in commercial lighting design. What that means is I did the budgets and did the design selections for custom builders and when they would do their lighting and electrical plans. That was a lot of fun for me. I got to use my creative side, but I also dealt with very, very large budgets. One of the biggest projects that I dealt with personally and brought in was Robeson Ranch, the retirement community up towards Denton. So budgeting, numbers, knowing what we need, that is my background. Since then, I've had 2 amazing kiddos and decided to be a stay-at-home mom for a while. That allowed me the privilege to be able to volunteer in our schools. I started volunteering in AISD when my daughter was only 3 years old because I wanted to see what our schools were about. But I didn't go and volunteer at the school where my child would go. Instead, I went across town to Roark, and I served on SBDM there. And when I did, I saw schools that did not look like Ditto Elementary, which is what we were zoned for. And that immediately, it pulled on my heart, and I knew right then, I want to be involved, and it doesn't just have to be at our schools where my kids are going to attend. Since, holy smoke. Since then, I have had the opportunity to go on. I am now the full-time director of Youth and Children Ministries locally here in town, so I have gotten to put my passion towards a new project that I enjoy.
The Texas Education Agency Vacancy Task Force recently issued a report calling for higher pay, expanded training, and high-quality work environment to help retain teachers and other school employees. Teacher turnover is about 12% of the workforce statewide, up from 10%. So, Arlington recently granted a raise to teachers and other school employees and bumped starting pay to just over $60,000. Do you think salary increases are enough? What are your ideas to retain teachers and other school employees in Arlington?
Yes, I realize about the salary, and that is definitely something that we have to look at, but it's more than that. Based on conversations that I've had with teachers, great teachers, they're even contemplating, hey, there's just so much work, so much paperwork that's just bogging them down, and they're having to do it after, on their own time, and it is just really overwhelming them. We really need to look at that to see, okay, what needs to be streamlined? What do we need to do to make it more efficient? Because this is really bogging them down, so much so that some have told me confidentially that I'm thinking about leaving and coming back as a substitute so I can just teach. And that's sad. But it's like we really need to look at that. And yes, compensation is big. Eggs, $7. I mean, it's expensive and it's very difficult. But we definitely need to look at that. We need to make sure that there's safety for sure. And so we need to make sure that we are looking at it from the broad scale. Paperwork, what are they doing? Can we streamline it? Can we get rid of some of it? What do we need? Tools do we need to give to them to help them? So I believe that doing that from an end-to-end view, because that's how I do things, then we can definitely help retain, and especially when it comes to pay and safety and retirement and things like that, because there is a huge turnover. And the ones that are in the class, they're just overwhelmed. And so we definitely need to do some kind of change there, and it needs to be in a broad spectrum, and we have to listen to the teachers. They are the ones that are teaching our kids. They're the front line. They're the boots on the ground. So we need to make sure that what are they telling us? What can we change? We can't just be sitting up here as Board of Trustees and like, okay, well, we're just going to put these curriculums down here. And it's like, well, hold on. What are they saying? We need to make sure that we're doing a partnership here. So, and I realize that there are things that the state requires, but what other stuff are we putting on our teachers? And so I believe that we need to look at it from a broad scale.
All right, same question. I'm a performance psychology major at Grand Canyon University. B.F. Skinner says that money is not the only motivating factor in what you want to do. And being a teacher for almost 20 years at Arlington ISD, I worked 16 hours a day. And when you're, somebody had asked me like, well, how are you such a great, because I had teacher of the year and all that stuff, but they're like, what makes you such a great teacher? I'd get in before the sun came up, and left when the sun went down. And I wasn't compensated for it. And I figured, like, one of the reasons, as a teacher, you do it because you love it. You do it because it's for the kids. You get up at 4 in the morning, you come to school because it's for the kids. The teachers are worn out. There's a couple things that are wearing teachers out. Behavior is wearing teachers out, and then all the paperwork you have to do is wearing teachers out. I currently work at Little Elm ISD. I am a assistant principal over there. And one thing I made is my teachers, if they're going to work extra, they're going to get compensated. I don't expect them to come in, because it's been like that in education for so long. Specifically, I would go and see what teachers are doing and examine what teachers are doing, how much time they're spending at school, to see what we can take out. Some things you can't take out, it's required by TEA. But there's other things that they're doing that's at school level that we could take off of them and make it a place to be. Because if you want a great school district, you got to have great teachers. And have great teachers, they can't be worn out. They have to be safe, and they have to want to be there, because the kids deserve that. So to be able to examine like a teacher's day would be perfect.
So my other two Place 7 candidates have stated the main thing that a lot of teachers want is an increase in pay. But I also think we have to look at other factors. We also have to think about health insurance and the cost. Coming from a family where I have had a mother who worked as a paraprofessional, her health insurance was almost more than her paycheck every month. So looking at the cost of health care. Also treating teachers as the professionals that they are. So teachers have training. They're required to get 150 hours of professional development a year. Oftentimes, they will tell you it's not about what they're teaching. So making sure that their time is utilized to actually help them grow as educators and not just to check a box. I've heard about behavior, and I would agree that that's an issue, but I think one of the things that we can do to take those things off of teachers' plates is making sure that our buildings are staffed with mental health care professionals who can do some of the work that teachers are having to do. I was a teacher in a Title I school, so I know that oftentimes I was the counselor, the teacher, the preacher, the parent, and a little bit of everything. But I also know that we provided services that took some of that off my plate. And so if we're thinking about teachers, we have to think about the building as a whole and where can we support everybody so that teachers are not doing a lot of that work.
I think that our teachers went from 2 years ago being superheroes to now all of a sudden we've forgotten about them again. We forgot how hard it is, what they do. Whether we're talking about safety or maintaining large attendance in a classroom, our teachers are tired. I'm tired watching them. So I think about what can we do? What are real answers? Because I don't know how it works in Little Elm, because I don't do budgets there, but I can't just say, well, you worked more, you need more money. We have to be very careful in how we're saying we want to reward teachers. What are real things we can do? Already, AISD did that 4% increase. We need to maintain that and keep offering those increases that are going to keep the teachers here wanting to teach. At the same time, though, we need to utilize our communities and do a better partnership. We have right down the street here at UTA one of the best social work departments in the nation. We need to partner with them, get them in to learn and teach these teachers more soft skills, but more importantly, not the teachers, because they already know everything. What can we do here at Arlington High to get the social work department to come partner with these kids and give them life skills? How they're going to handle anger when their emotions aren't right? Right now, they know what they're taught. That's all they know. So let's teach them something more. But you can't put that on the teachers. Their plates are full. So what can we do to support them? We can get more involved with the software system and find out why they don't talk to each other right now, and they're inputting that same information 3 different places. And not to mention, we also have a legislative responsibility. Do you know retired teachers have not had a cost of living raise in 19 years? Yeah. We don't just take care of our teachers now teaching, we take care of those who taught us too.
Okay, so the next question. There's been a lot of talk about banning books from our schools, and several communities in our state and near Arlington are doing this. What is your stance on book removal and possible bans, which seem to be around here focused more on BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus experiences and representation? Again, what is your stance on book removal?
Book banning. This is a good one. I'm a history guy, right? So banning books for me, I go back to World War II and burning books and stuff like that. We got to follow the law, like the law set forth by the state. You're going to have to follow like parameters that they put on it. And I'd have to say if it goes against the law, that you wouldn't be able to have it in the school. Like that would be my stance, is banning books. I know I see the look right there. And I haven't thought about that question a lot. I'm going to be honest with you.
A child needs to see themselves in books. They need to see their families. They need to see their neighbors, because we cannot grow as a community in a world if we hide things from children because we decide that they are not ready. One of the things that I don't think people realize is, particularly in school libraries, a school librarian has to go and get a master's degree in library and tech media to even be there. They are one of the most trained people in that building. They know kids and they know books, and you do not mess with the school librarian. There are policies in our district that if there is a particular book or type of book that you do not want your child to have access to, that you can do that. Parents have access to anything in a teacher's classroom that in regards to children that is not a violation of somebody else's privacy. But I am not a proponent of banning books, because when we start banning books, what we're saying is who you are is something we can't talk about, and I'm not okay with that.
Banning books. Arlington has talked a lot about this lately. My personal opinion may not be what I do as a trustee. I'll be honest with you. If my daughter had not gone to the restroom, she would tell you, I didn't let her read Junie B. Jones books because she was sassy. I limit books in my house that I don't want my children reading. I think parental control is important in your home. In a library setting at school, we have librarians who have their master's degree. They're going to determine that. And if I ever had an issue as a parent, as an aunt, as a taxpayer, I would do the appropriate response. I would fill out the complaint. They would pull the book. They would review it. I could also go into school and make sure my child is not even allowed to check out that book. There are plenty of procedures in place. All we have to do is follow them as parents and take on that responsibility. I am a big, big proponent of parental control of what your child sees and does. And what I think is okay for my child may not be okay for your child, or your child. But that doesn't mean I get to go and ban books. That's a tricky, tricky slope we get on, and we have to be very, very careful. Noli will now tell you I didn't let her read Junie B. Jones, and I apologize. I'm sorry.
Well, when it comes to banning books, and I agree that there are processes and procedures in place. If there are particular books that a parent does not want their child to read, then again, they need to follow the process. But to do a blanket across the board is not fair. It's not fair when you look at the grand scope, because you're doing a tunnel vision there. You need to look at it broadly, like, okay, so you may not like this book, but this parent may be okay with that book, and it's their right. So we do have processes in place. If there is definitely, if there's something that they do not agree with, then go ahead and file the complaint. Go ahead and say, not for my kid, or yes for my kid. And we have to honor that. We just have to honor that. Because at the end of the day, it's their kids. They're the parents. They had the kids. The only reason we have a school district is because of the parents. So it is up to them.
You probably have seen our governor in the news going from rural town to rural town, trying to promote school vouchers. The AISD is on record as opposing these efforts. Specifically, AISD's website says that lawmakers should, quote, reject legislation that diverts public funds to private institutions that are not accountable to the public for the use of those funds, and instead direct efforts to expand choice in education to public schools that are held accountable for their performance and are transparent in their use of taxpayer dollars. So my question to you, my friend, where do you stand on this issue, and explain how you would deal with it?
I am opposed to school vouchers, unequivocally. I think that the goal behind school vouchers is to give parents choice because of quote-unquote failing districts. But I think if we properly fund our public schools, we would not need to divert money to private schools in a voucher system. I think that my response to that would be to help my colleagues on the board understand how we as a board can make sure that our students are fully funded, that our teachers are paid, that they have the resources that they need, so that our parents don't feel that they have to compete with our local private and charter schools. A lot of times we don't realize that some of those public funds are also diverted to charters that don't have the same oversight as our public institutions, our independent school districts. And so it's important to make sure that we are competitive with our district, with our competitors, our private schools. And the way to do that is to make sure that we are funding our public schools in Arlington ISD properly and efficiently.
Can I say amen? I mean, ditto? No, I am not a fan of school vouchers. I want our money staying in our public schools. I want our money staying with our students here. Vouchers have been abused by our state for quite some time. As Corliss gave the background story, it was meant to give parents choice. But so often, it doesn't give the parents choice who actually need it. Instead, it's used by parents who want to go to an expensive private school, and the parents that it was intended to use in the first place for vouchers, they don't need it. They cannot get their kid to that private school. They cannot afford the uniforms that go with it or the extracurriculars. They are not using the voucher system properly. So to let it be allowed here or to invade our AISD, that is not something we want to deal with. We want to make sure that our money stays right here at home with our district and that the policies are not abused. Another thing to keep in mind with our charter schools, we often see them come back, those students that have been pulled out to go to beginning charter schools. They then come back to AISD and they are not at standard. They're not even at standard, they're below. You are then asking a teacher to catch them back up and put more work on them. We have to maintain some sort of set standard, and right now our voucher system does not allow for that, and so that is not something I could support.
No, I don't. I don't support vouchers because I'm echoing what's been said here, and it's true. It takes away from the funding in AISD, and so when you start taking that money away, it's like, okay. So we have, you have this big bucket, then you got this little bucket, and it's like, okay, so now what? Now we don't have this money, we're going to have to start taking away, or we're not going to be able to help as much as we wanted to, or provide additional programs or things like that, because now it's not there. And so no, I don't. I think what needs to be the concentration is that our tax dollars need to stay in the school system, in the public school system. We need to make it as excellent as possible, make sure that they're academically just excellent all the way through, prepare them for life, prepare them to be a leader, and we can't keep doing that if they keep pulling money out. And then again, they come back and it's like, okay, now we got to catch this kid up or whatever. But no, I don't support school vouchers.
Horace Mann, we'll go back to 8th grade U.S. history. Horace Mann said, education is a great equalizer. And so when you look at charter schools, we had a bunch of kids come back from charter schools. The charter school opened up. A lot of kids went from 8th grade, went there, it's a new thing, and came right back to Bowie. So when you start splitting the money up, right, say the students that want to go can't go, right, in order to be able to fund all your school, because it's about equity, it's not about equality, it's about equity, that every child in the school district, that we're going to spend that money properly, right, and it's not going to get siphoned off to go to charter schools, because charter schools, the requirements are way different than they are in public schools. And you do see when the students come back from the charter school that they're not quite where they should be. And we've seen that from them coming back to the high school.
There are many attempts at the state level to erase racial diversity considerations in hiring. Governor Abbott, for example, has told state agencies to stop considering racial diversity in hiring decisions, and some pundits speculate this order will trickle down to local governments and school districts. So here's your question. Okay. If or when it does, in a district that is only 18% white, do you agree or disagree that racial diversity should be considered in AISD hiring?
I want teachers that are educated, capable, and ready to teach our students. I want them to look like our community. I want them to look like, when you go outside right now, they shouldn't all look like me. A lot of them do. A lot of them are Caucasian females. I want that when your daughter goes to school, or your son or your daughter, and it's funny, we sit up here, the four of us diverse, they deserve to have teachers that look like themselves. We can't put a number on it. I don't think you can say, well, they all should be this, they should all be that. At the end of the day, it's more important we have educated, well-prepared, willing, and good teachers in these classrooms. But they shouldn't all look like me. They need to look like our community. Arlington is diverse, our schools are diverse, and so should our educators.
Yeah, yes, they should be diverse, and yes, definitely they need to be, their skill set needs to be par in order to teach our children. I happen to have been one of the low-hanging fruit when I started with AT&T 26 years ago, and so I know it's not in the school. However, I was the diverse one. And everybody else was the college and everything, and it's like, oh my gosh, I hadn't gotten my degree yet and all that. But this person, because they saw my ability and they saw that, hey, you may not have the paper, but I can see that you have a passion in what you want to do, and they gave me that chance, and I proved it. And so I believe that yes, it needs to be across the board. Give everyone the opportunity. Definitely that if they have the skill set, if they have what it takes to be a great educator, then why not? It should never be, okay, 10% here, 5% there, 10% here. It's like, no, I mean, let's make it an equal playing field for everyone.
I'm going to borrow something you said. Is that okay?
Yeah,
all right, for books. And when they talk about, when you talk about students in a class, and and then being able to see themselves in a teacher. And so it's the same thing you said about books. It's like we have to make an effort and say, oh, they're unqualified. No, all else being the same, right? It's we have a school that is 70% minority students. 80% of the teachers are Caucasian, right? And not here, up somewhere else. And so it's if the kids aren't seeing themselves, they don't see themselves. Like you ask a kid, well, what do you want to be? They don't see a teacher because they've never seen an African American teacher. They've never had an African American teacher until 9th, 10th grade coach. You know, there are African Americans out there that are qualified that you do have to hire so many. No, you don't. But you want like representation in the district. You want representation at that school, because I want my kids at my school to be able to see if you want to be an educator, you can. You know, even if your parents left you at 14, right? That you can get a doctorate degree and nobody's going to hold you back. And that's what, as an educator, I like to show my students I'm a lifelong learner, and that's something that they can see in themselves.
Thank you. Yes, I believe it should be a consideration, and I think the next step to that is growing our teacher pipeline from a more diverse pool. So when we think about student teaching and we think about where we're hiring teachers, are we going to HBCUs? Are we going to predominantly Latino serving institutions? So that's the first thing, really looking at where we're getting our pipeline and making sure it is diverse. And the second part is removing the barrier that keeps diversity from happening. As I'm sure you know, student teachers are not paid. If I am from a first generation family and I have to work after student teaching, the chances of me continuing that program are very low. So we as a district have to look at ways, and there are ways, it's what I do for a living, to pay student teachers, which increases the diversity. It is possible. I have seen it done. And so in order to increase that diversity, we have to come up with different solutions than what we already have.
There are attempts in the state legislature and administration to ban so-called critical race theory education in our schools. I know you've heard that term batted around. Since critical race theory is actually a graduate law school course and not part of the K through 12 curriculum, we're curious about your thoughts. And so this has 3 parts. First of all, what is your opinion of critical race? Do you think it should be taught in our schools? And whether students should be shielded from education about history of race relations in the U.S.
That's a great question. If we're going to reduce it,
Okay.
let's reduce it to that last question.
Whether students should be shielded from education about the history of race relations in the U.S.
No. They need to know the truth. Because guess what? If they don't know it in its original context, because you know what? It's not pretty. Some things are not pretty. But it happened. And it needs to be taught in its original context. Because if we don't teach that, it's like you can repeat it. You don't want to do that. You want to show them, hey, this is, I mean, it's ugly. This is what happened. And you know what? But this is where we were. This is where we are. But we still have some work to do. But we need to be totally honest about what has happened in history, again, in its original context, and have that discussion. And even in having that discussion, let it be healthy. You know what? Yeah, you're right. There's still some racism happening today. You're right. There's a lot of laws that have changed where are good, but there's some heart issues that continue. So we're dealing with those kind of things. But I am all about, you need to tell the truth of what's happened, be real about it, and have some healthy discussion moving forward.
Bowie High School, I was the first teacher to teach African American studies. And critical race theory, they pointed out, it's not taking place in school. And one thing I think that people need to understand about history is, as a historian, and as a teacher, I teach the history. I teach it as it happened, and the student will use their experience, their perception, to be able to break it down, analyze it. I don't have to say, hey, you know what, it was wrong. No, they hung people from trees. They lynched people. I don't have to say, oh, you need to feel this way. That will show them. If we just teach history, right, and let the students decide, and their capacity to be able to wow, that looked wrong. In my African American Studies class, we had a mix of kids, but we had discussions, right? And I would just put it out there that this is what happened, and then the kids would start talking, right? Jim Crow laws, and the discussion was theirs. And I think that's the healthy way to do it. And all education, I shouldn't be telling the kid. No, we don't tell kids how to think, right? We teach them the information. We let them synthesize it, analyze it, and then they come up with their own opinions. That's what we need in society. That makes problem solvers.
I would like to attempt to answer two of the questions. I think that it's important that when people are criticizing critical race theory, that they actually understand what critical race theory is. And so I would like to say that there is a disconnect between what critical race theory actually is and what pundits say it is. If we really understand critical race theory, we know that Texas legislature has outlawed anything that they think is critical race theory. So teachers are not teaching that in school. They don't have the time to teach that in school. To Watson's point, yes, our students need to hear the history as it has happened and, like he said, form their own opinion. I do not believe that whitewashing history for students, not telling them the truth, benefits them, because the saying goes, we are doomed to repeat history we do not know. And we know that if our students don't grasp what has happened, we will continue to see the cycles that we continue to see.
I'm glad that you mentioned House Bill 3 that was passed last year that bans it. Parents can also go into a school and file a complaint if they think it's being taught. So parents do have that option of control if they think there is an issue going on. For me, thinking about race relations and do we shield? I don't think we shield, but I do think we teach the truth at different levels. What I want my son to hear in 3rd grade is not what I want you to hear as a middle schooler. It's not what I want to hear a high schooler teach. It is age-appropriate learning, and that is what we do. We need to teach our kids the truth at a young age, and when they grow up, as they're going, they are able to build on that history, but it's factual history. It's not history that we tell that makes us feel better. It's the truth. I want my kids to know what happened. I recently took an educator's course, ongoing education class in Birmingham. I went to the Institute, and for the first time in my life, I saw a KKK robe. I sat and cried. It was real to me at 42 years old seeing that. I don't know if Reed needs to go at 9 years old and see it, but at 42, I did. And the big thing that I think, because I'm not an educator, I have a different view. I think about the resurrection and Easter. If we whitewash Easter and we forget about the crucifixion, we forget about the bad, we don't teach the bad, all we do is celebrate 3 days later, he rose from the grave. Man, you got to teach the bad with the good sometimes. And as a minister, it's important to me that we don't forget that even as Christians, we can still look at history and say, we have to teach the facts. You can't celebrate the good without the bad.
This one, the topic is school security. I know you probably thought about this one. Okay. All right. Arlington ISD's bond program has included measures to harden our schools against would-be mass shooters. Where do you see areas for improvement in AISD's school security programs?
A district has to have a protocol, a safety protocol for the entire district, and then each school has a safety team that has protocol for that. At any given time in the high schools, there could be 3-4 guns in a high school. And that happened at Bowie High School, where they had the kid had guns, silencers, drugs, all that, and got into the school. When you harden the school, a lot of people think that, oh, people aren't going to want to go there because, like, metal detectors, right? They do a certain percentage of metal detectors every month, right? If you did it every day, they're saying it would send the wrong message, but the message should be safety. The message should be that your kid can come to school and not worried about getting killed, right? That your kid, that we're going to do everything we can to make your school safe. And I think hardening the schools, when we talk about hardening, there's different levels of security, right? And it starts with the teacher, and it starts with the counselors, and it works its way up. You got a human aspect, and you have physical aspects. Where do you want to put a gate around your school? Do you want a security guard outside to be able to be the first responder who he sees something, he can call it in, we lock down the school, and now we're good to try to alleviate that threat. But we got to take a holistic approach to it. People have to be involved, and then there's bond money that the AISD got to be able to fences, metal detectors, and SROs, and you got to be proactive with it. You got to be proactive. We have to seek the guns in the schools, and if we have to do a metal detector, you got to walk through a metal detector every day. I'm cool with my kid walking through a metal detector every day, as long as it keeps him from getting his head blown off. I'm cool with it. And so we got to flip the narrative to we are trying to keep your students safe is the narrative that we have to have.
I have a little bit of a different take on school safety. I do think it is important. As a parent whose child attends a school where there was a gun found, I think the district has done a better job of the see something, say something protocol to make sure that if a student sees the gun, that it is reported, and then parents are informed about what happens. I think, as Brooklyn mentioned, parent control. We can talk about safety. We can have metal detectors, which I think there's a better process for those, because the first time they were at my daughter's school, everybody missed first period. So I think there is a better process for implementing metal detectors and searches. But I think if we think about the community at large, if anybody over 18 and sometimes under 18 can go and buy a gun, then those guns end up in our schools. So what are we doing as a community to make sure that our schools are safe zones? If we want parent involvement, we can start there. Talking to our parents, just like we have PTA meetings and calling parents and ask them to raise funds, calling in parents and talking about gun safety. Talking to students about gun safety. What happens when you see a gun? Who do you call? What do you do? What happens when you report it? So, yes, I think the district is doing a good job. We have thankfully not had any school shootings. But I am not at all surprised to hear that guns are ending up in our school, because they're ending up in our community. So we have to think about the community as a whole so that it can be safe, so that our schools can be safer.
This sucks, you guys, that we're talking about guns at a school board forum. I remember the first time my child had a school lockdown drill, but not for tornado or weather, but because what do you do when a bad guy, what do you do when a gun enters your school? And I remember crying. And then this year she came home and said, there was a gun on school campus. We're in middle school, you guys. My 11-year-old dealt with it. So what do we do? Well, I said in a meeting this week with the AISD security officer, we are short 43 SROs right now. We've got to get staffed. Well, where do you find them? I don't have the answer. But I do know I wanted to know that statistic. I want to know where we are hurting. Where do we need to fill in our gaps? APD right now offers roving officers where they go to the different schools to be a presence. But what do we do when you're at Arlington High, where our last incident that happened involving a gun was not a student, but a parent coming to settle a score with another student? That's the community problem we have. So what do? I don't know, but I know it scares me, and I want to do better, and I want to know more. And that's where I think we partner with places like UTA and social work. We teach kids how to handle their problems before reaching to a gun. Out of anger, that's not the first thing they go to. I know it's easier said than done. I know that. But we have to break a cycle somehow. And if it's not our generation that says we're done, we're not going to tolerate this anymore, then it could be at our kids' school where we have that next shooting. Because it's not when, It's if. It's not if, it is when. We've watched it happen, and I don't want it to be at AISD. And we can't put our heads in the sand.
I happened to be in a drill. I mean, when I was substituting, I had never been in one. And it amazed me that these 8-year-olds, I mean, they immediately went to this one area, and it's like, everybody be quiet. And it really, like, man, that is sad that these kids, they know exactly where to go and what to do and all this stuff. And I'm like, that is really sad. And so from safety, it is extremely important. In this day and age, it's unfortunate that we have to really think, what are we going to do to make sure that our kids are safe? One of the things I thought about is like, hey, I'm all about stealth, meaning like your sky marshals, you know, getting some security to where they are present, but no one really knows that who it is. Because the perpetrators, that's what they look for. They look for the police officers. They look for the security guard that's dressed. They look for all that. But it's like, okay, what if we change it up some? Because at the end of the day, we got to play. We got to play on their field. We got to think like, how can we outsmart these people? It's unfortunate, but we got to really think along those lines. And yes, we need to make sure and continue the programs and ask the kids, hey, if you see something, let us know. Make sure to tell the parents. Make sure to tell an educator. But really, because of how bad it's gotten, and thank God that we have not had that. I'm so thankful for that. But you're always getting these alerts. Hey, possible. I get it all the time on my phone. And I was like, golly, that suspicious person here or there. You know, APD can't be everywhere, but it's like, okay, well, let's think about, you know, some undercover, you know, level-headed professional security, and maybe have a presence that way. And the public knowing that, and maybe that'll divert them, that perpetrator, like, oh, I don't know, maybe there's somebody else there that I don't know, that I can't recognize. Maybe it'll divert them.
Right now, the state has $30 billion in excess funds. How would you use that money in the district?
Well, so I think, of course, the first thing I would do is increase salaries for our school employees, and not just teachers. Everybody who works in the school pours into kids, and so we have to make sure that everybody who is in a school is grateful to be there, and that their pay reflects that. I know teachers are there because their heart is in it, but it's also nice to pay people for the work that they do. I think the next step would be looking at how can some of that money be used to improve the services that we provide to students. I agree with Brooklyn. Partnering with communities is important, but having people in the building when a child is in crisis is huge. We talk about guns in school. We talk about how students solve conflicts, but most schools are not staffed with people who are trained to do that. Mm-hmm. So using that money to make sure that those services are provided to students. And then the third thing I think that is important is the facilities. Students want to go to buildings that look nice. I got a question about bathrooms, and I know that bathrooms don't always have toilet tissue, soap, or privacy stalls. And talking to high school students, they were like, yes ma'am, can we get shower curtains in the locker room? So making sure that the facilities that our students are in are places that they actually want to go.
So you're sure that we have to use it in the district and we can't all go on vacation? Okay. In light of that, I think $30 million, I think right now we have to think about $30 billion. Once you hit a certain number, man, the M's and B's run together. I personally agree with the staff and the retention and the high competitive pay, but I think about the people like, our teachers are there with their heart for it, but what about the janitor and the aide and the lunch lady and the crossing guard? They may love what they do, but I'm not sure they grew up and said, someday I want to scoop mashed potatoes to the kid who's picking his nose. So those are the people that take care of our kids in the same way. They also stop and smile. They learn our kids' names. They encourage them. I want to see those people be taken care of along with our teachers. Our facilities, so many of them, with our bond, 2019 we passed an amazing bond. It is not completed yet. I would want to see that bond be completed at the same level that we passed in 2019. All of our projects, the 2019 will be complete, but we will not be able to do everything on the list now because of inflation. It's the world we live in. I'd want to see some of that money be able to complete those projects that we as taxpayers wanted to see be done. I think that is very important. With $30 billion, there are so many things that we could do. One of the things that I would also do is Tarrant County MHMR has a program called Help Me Grow, Help Me Thrive. They can put a resource MHMR officer on every campus. Tarrant County has already started piloting this program. AISD has not. We now need to follow in Fort Worth's footsteps and get mental health resource officers on our campuses. I would like to see that. To support our counselors who are overworked and our children need help, but also on the high school campuses where we may need more officers, but what we really need is more support staff like that.
Totally echo everything that's been said. We definitely do need support systems, and from a personal note, I experienced that with one of the grandkids, where they needed to talk to somebody and they couldn't get a hold of me quick enough. And so, but they needed somebody to talk to. And it really worried me because I was in a meeting at the time, and it's like, oh man, what's going on? And so, she says, she even told me, I don't know who to talk to. I go to, that nobody talks to me, and it's private and all this kind of stuff, and I couldn't get a hold of you. So I'm like, yes, we need some trained professionals that can definitely be there, be the boots on the ground and intervene, because I would have definitely been so heartbroken if something horrible would have happened because of what that one was going through. So definitely, $30 billion, that's a lot of change there, guys. It just is. There's a lot of money there. My motto is, I am about awakening the hidden talents in kids. Social media, let's talk about it. Social media has, the kids depend on, unfortunately, social media as their self-worth. It has. If you get enough clicks, if you get enough likes, you are worth it. You are popular. You are this or that. I believe that, we need to use money like that, do a positive, affirmation program, something to just divert or to counteract what's being fed to them. We need to do that. We need to slow them down, going back to basics. Because right now their attention span is based on let me swipe, swipe, swipe. So I think we need to really look at it as a whole.
I'm still stuck on 30 billion.
Yep.
So I calculated times 3%, that's $900 million. Like interest alone could fund like a lot of things. I'm baffled. Corliss was talking about schools. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, they did a study. And that said that school, how the school is set up, how if it's run down, that affects the student. And that's when we start talking about equity. I think counselors, if there's any counselors in the building, I love you. Counselors do too much. And I'm going to tell you why. A counselor has to do testing. A counselor has graduation to do for seniors, and they have so many things. So the actual counselor part of it has been put to the side, and they don't get to do that. And working in a school every day, all day long, I feel like a counselor. Kids are coming in, coach, this is going on, coach, this is going on. They just need somebody to talk to. Is really what it is. Kids don't get listened to. We don't ask kids enough, like, hey, what do you think? Like, what are you going through? And then we try to belittle, like, oh, that's not. No, every kid needs somebody. That's Rita Pearson. Every kid deserves a champion, right? They deserve somebody who's going to listen to them, who's going to motivate them, who's going to make them want to be successful. The only reason I'm sitting in front of you here tonight, right, is because of my teacher, Ms. Dvorak. Ms. Dvorak took me for I was nobody. My teachers back then would say you were nobody, you're not going to be anything. But she taught me better, and she taught me I was somebody. But that was a teacher, you know, who took the time with me to have professionals in the building just to listen to the kids. Because if you catch one kid that's thinking about killing themselves, it's worth it to have 10 counselors in the building. If you just catch one kid. And it is the saddest thing in the world. When I was at Crowley, we had a kid commit suicide. That was a 6th grader. If she had somebody to talk to. And the bullying and just addressing that. Bullying is one of the things that you get no mercy from me when you come to my office. If you're a bully, we're going to take care of you appropriately. We don't deal with bullies because every kid is going through something. It takes somebody on that campus, every campus, to ask that question. And if the kid, you know, we have how many kids in AISD? 60,000, 65,000?
52.
52? Good job. If we need people. And if the state has money, we should be able to create a program to bring people to talk to the kids so the kids have somebody to talk to, you know. And, you know, teachers, I love teachers. I love just, it's all about the kids. When we take our focus off the kids, we're not doing them justice.
We have one question from the audience. If you have something that's stirring in your mind that you would like answered, someone, not me because I'm at the microphone, can bring you a card and a pen, but I'm going to limit the response time for y'all to 1 minute.
The young lady right there raised her hand first.
We have 2, and then Joanna, I think.
So did y'all hear that? You get 1 minute
To answer this question?
to respond to the rest of these questions.
Oh, okay, 1 minute.
Yeah,
I got
just so we can try to get.
I'll set my own timer. I got
Yes, you were. You'll next time. Okay. All right, and I'm going to read this, and I'm a person with dyslexia, and it's in cursive, and I'm a child of the 90s, and I don't know how to read cursive that well. So, here we go. How do you feel about increasing access to mental health counselors, or social workers in the schools?
I'm in favor of it. I mean, it's that simple. I don't think I have to. I believe there are programs already in existence. We just need to put them in place in AISD. So, simple answer.
Same thing. I'm in favor of it. Like I said a little while ago, I've experienced it firsthand. It's important, especially in this day and age. I mean, yeah, you're right. Bullying needs to be a no-no, but definitely we got to have some very, very trained professionals to help whenever things like this arise.
$30 billion.
No, you don't have $30 billion for this question. You have minuscule money.
No money.
Are you in support?
So
Yes or no?
I'd support it because anything that benefits the kids, once again, is something that we should support.
I absolutely support it, and if I'm being honest, I think extending those services more readily to teachers and school employees. I know we have EAP in districts, but if you've ever had to use EAP, you know that can be employee assistance program. You know that can be limited. 6 sessions is always not enough. I know that from personal experience. So I think that having resources also available for our staff who, as we know, are dealing with trauma just from the world collectively is also important.
You know, our superintendent is retiring at 54 years old. He is 54. He's worn out too. So, as the school board looks for a new superintendent, what are the top 3 qualities you would look for if you were part of that selection committee?
No. 3 things. In the Marine Corps, we have leadership traits and leadership qualities, and these are things that measure your leadership. I think the next superintendent we have needs to be a good leader because there's a lot of problems that we're dealing with. You know, integrity would be my number 1 thing because that's always my number 1 thing from the leadership traits is integrity, dependability, somebody that we can depend on. And, you know, and somebody who thinks outside the box, like somebody coming in, because I was talking to a constituent at the Elks Lodge, and they were talking about more programs for kids that aren't on that college track. You know, we got the CTC, but it's limited in the scope of how many kids it can take. And I'm for, you know, it's college ready, career ready, or military. We have students that are graduating from our high schools with a high school diploma that cannot score high enough, right, to get in the military. And that's what saved me, you know. But somebody who can think outside the box, right, so we can change and move forward.
So my first quality would be somebody who is focused on equity, and equity being that they meet the needs of all of our students. Also, someone who is willing to be collaborative, understanding that the board, yes, hires and fires the superintendent, but we also want to work with them. And then also someone who is willing to understand and listen to the needs of the staff, not just based on testing data, but data that they are collecting in real time. So making sure that they are not only collaborating with the board, but really understanding what teachers are doing every day. We get caught up in test scores, particularly, what is the test? STAR. I was about to say tax. I was about to take it back to the tax test. But making sure that we're understanding that they know how to use all of the data and not just data from standardized test scores.
I think we need an excellent leader to come in and fill the shoes of Dr. C. Especially we have this 2019 bond project that has not been completed. It is important that we have somebody who is ready to continue that vision and understands what is already in place and what matters. So leadership is going to be important. I also think it's going to have to be somebody who is an excellent communicator. Our district is huge. We have area superintendents, we have principals, we have APs, we have a school board, we have a city council, and we have a lot of active residents. He or she needs to be very good at communicating. I also think it is going to be important that they are transparent about their vision for the future of AISD.
All great stuff, and it's true. They need to have strong leadership. They need to ensure that they do communicate. They are transparent and they have integrity. That is important. They need to be open as to the community. They need to listen to the voices and not just shake a hand and yes, okay, great. There needs to be a partnership, even though that the board does hire, but there needs to be a partnership. And yes, thinking outside of the box you got to look at it from a wide scale. You cannot be tunnel vision. They got to look at it from an end-to-end perspective.
How do you explain what the school board does and the importance of the school board to AISD students?
So I have AISD students, and when I ask them about running for school board, one of my children said I might get fired, and it's so explaining to them that this is a volunteer role and helping them understand that our goal is to make sure that the vision that has been set is implemented, making sure that our superintendent is helping propel that vision, and also keeping the district budget-wise, making sure that the budget is not in a deficit, which it has not been and is not. So those are the three things I would explain. We are partners with the superintendent. We help make sure the vision is implemented, and we make sure that the money is spent like it is supposed to be.
The way that I have explained it in my level of non-educator is a trustee is a trusted person. We are not called a representative because a representative represents certain areas of town and areas. As a trustee, you are representing everyone, all of the students as one, versus somebody who might just represent a certain area. Just because you do this area doesn't mean it's what our students want. The other thing to understand with a trustee is we are not your day-to-day operations. If somebody says, hey, can you fire the football coach or can you get that third grade teacher? We don't do that. We have the 30,000-foot view of the district while the superintendent is dealing with the day-to-day operations. It's very important that we understand that this is a volunteer role. Sadly, it is not paid, but to also stay in our lane and understand we are the big picture, the budget, the legislative agenda is what we get to set forth, while the superintendent deals with the day-to-day.
Yes, we are at the 30,000 square, I mean, we are overseeing, looking at curriculum, looking at policies, looking at all those things. And again, the superintendent does do the day-to-day, does the implementation and so forth. The one thing is that we have to protect the taxpayers' money. We have to make sure that it is being spent in the right areas, and definitely look at, okay, where can we improve? What can we move if possible? We are the overseers of that and the trusted overseers. And we're accountable to you all. We are accountable to you all because you would be the ones voting one of us in, and you expect us to be transparent. You expect us to be honest and to be very truthful in everything that we're doing. And if there's a change, y'all need to know about it, and you need to know why. That's what it's about.
I think at the school board is like governance, and as the superintendent is operations. You know, like you have same thing in Marine Corps. They run operations day to day, like you said. They're not coming. Hey, get this person. No, you're not doing that. But to oversee, because we're trusted by you to do that, to go in there, be impartial, have integrity. And when you see something that's not right, because I've seen a lot of things in the news and a lot of things, when you see something that's not right, you got to call it. And as a trustee, you're trusted by the people to go ahead and to ensure that the school board runs, that the school district runs effectively, and that everybody is represented.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And this came from the audience. Thank you so much. East Arlington is the epicenter of AISD student population, high minority, and it has many struggling schools. What would you do to increase access to STEM, fine arts programs for the students in this area, and to to improve student achievement to those schools, and primarily to Black and brown students?
I think it's important to think about why and know why those students don't have access to those things. So I think it's first important to make sure that the information is getting to students about the possibilities of what is surrounding them. In an ideal world, I would have that $30 billion, and every school would offer a fine arts academy and dual language. Every school would have STEM programs. That is not what we have right now. I think it's important to make sure that when we are looking at those schools, we are making sure they are staffed by people who believe that those children can achieve. I know I've taught in those types of schools, and oftentimes you have teachers who may not understand the needs of the students. They don't have the services they need, and then making sure that when they have those things that they can achieve and have STEM programs. I think our district could look at why do we only have dual language in certain areas, and where can we put it? We know what dual language is and the populations, and the population for dual language to really grow is in East Arlington. So how do we take some funds to make sure that those things are happening in places where it'll be most successful?
I think this is a complex question, and 60 seconds to answer it gives me pause. East Arlington is growing in very different ways. We have downtown Arlington, we have Meadowbrook Park with the Statue Garden. We have so many different things, but we also have Crow Leadership Academy, and I'm going to say this wrong, Percy, thank you.
It's Piercy.
Piercy.
I thought it was Percy.
We do have opportunities over there. They may not be as many, which we need to grow, but we need to make sure that people are aware of the opportunities available there that are open to them. We also need to make sure parents know that there is an open AISD transfer that you can apply and do. Now, what do we do in the meantime? We make sure that these current programs are successful. Otherwise, they don't want to keep funding a fine arts dual language program. They don't want to fund a leadership academy. When parents pull their kids out and don't support what we already have in place, AISD is not going to continue to look and put these on other parts of town. So we have to support our current programs accurately.
Yeah, definitely we need to make sure that the programs that at other schools, that they understand the needs of their students. They need to understand that at the school level. And also, like you said, the parents, they need to understand, hey, this is available. If you want your child to go to a school that offers that, we have a solution for that. So it's not like we don't have that opportunity. There is an opportunity, but we also need to look at that and say, okay, we have a lot of minorities over here, and there is something that's missing here. We need to look at that. We need to look at the data on that one. We need to understand, because we need to start broadening these programs to them so that they can have that opportunity to grow. So I believe that looking at it, again, I'm a numbers person. I look at it like from a wide scale. Because I can tell you from an underserved, when I grew up, there was schools that gave these, great programs, and when I was given that opportunity, I took it. So it's time to let it happen.
In 1978, there was a young kid who was an 8th grader or 7th grader. No, 8 years old, 7 years old. And he was bused 1 hour to school and 1 hour back because Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School didn't have the programs that Capitol Hill Elementary School had. I am not for saying, hey, let's just pick up and let's go over there. No, it gives the kid a sense of you don't care about them because they're over here on this side of town. Equity. Kids on that side of town need the exact same things for the kids on that side of town. Everybody needs equity. We need equity. And we find out, how do we find out what they need? Because there's different cultures are different. And you got to go in there, you got to find out. Like, there's some cultures just work. You know what? Just drop out of 8th grade and work. We have to educate people about that. And then we have to go to the people that are there and ask them what they need. What we do is we sit up here and we make decisions for people on that side of town. We're like, oh, that'll be fine. Let's bust them over to this side. No, let's get the voices over there, find out what they need, and let's give it to them. If you're going to give it to somebody over here, give it to them over there. That's equity.
We said 7 to 8:30, and it's like 8:28. So everybody's done a great job here. I'd like to thank our moderators. I'd like to thank the little people. And I especially, because I have often thought about running for office but never had the guts to put myself out there. I would really like to thank these candidates for stepping up and doing it. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time to come tonight. Now, some of them have literature and signs. If you would like to sign up to join the Progressive Women of Arlington, somebody here will help you. And, and Arlington Residents for Inclusion, we thank you and your group for all the great work that you're doing. So, without any further ado, thank you so much. Thank you, candidates. See you next time.